Hello, hello, hello. We are that time again, everybody. It is Thursday. It is 2 p.m. and we are back for Burnout Ends Here, which will soon be, although I've changed it already this time, it's going to be Burnoutology. We're going to be Burnoutology live every Thursday at 2. So we are live on YouTube. We are live on LinkedIn. And for those of you that are watching us live, do say hi, give us a bit of a wave, drop in the comments. Say that you are there, but you will, I was going to say eagle-eyed. You don't need to be eagle-eyed. You will know that there is just not me this afternoon. I've got two fabulous guests that I'm going to be talking to for, again, up to the next hour. So we're still going to be done by absolutely 3 o'clock. But I have got two fabulous women that are joining me this afternoon, two fabulous members of the Burnout Academy. They are members of the Burnout Academy alumni. They have joined me on the Burnout Awareness training. We're not here to sell. I'm not here to sell you anything or pitch you anything. I just wanted to kind of use today for us to talk again about like burnout awareness, right? Why do we need to have it? We're seeing numbers grow. We've had Gallup Workplace Report come out again this week. There's definitely, in my mind, a correlation between engagement and performance and the rising statistics that we're seeing with burnout. And I think lots of us think that we're burnout aware and we're actually not. Lots of us think we know what burnout is and we don't. We are kind of miscommunicating it. We're misinterpreting it. We're ignoring it. Some people are still thinking it's not a thing. So I thought I'd have just a conversation with Tracy and Britt this afternoon. I'm going to ask them in a moment to just introduce themselves. If you are watching us live, do say hi, pop your name in the comments. Let us know that you are there. And I know sometimes they come through really slowly. So hopefully we can speed that up a bit this afternoon. But yeah, for this afternoon, for this live, we're just really going to talk about like why we need more burnout awareness, why more of us need to be burnout aware, why we need to be paying more attention, the damage that we can do if we think that we know what burnout is and we don't, some of the kind of issues and challenges and all of those sorts of things. So that's kind of where we're going to go this afternoon. And maybe for the first time ever, I'm not going to do much talking today. Again, for those of you that will join me regularly, you'll know I can talk about this stuff for England and never, ever shut up. But I'm going to be giving quite a lot of the floor this afternoon to Tracy and to Britt. So before I go any further, ladies, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. But firstly, thank you very much for joining me. I know this is a bit of a, well, this is the first for both of you, I think, isn't it? You're both like, do we really want to go live? What's going to be happening? What are we going to go? And I've promised you, haven't I? This is just a chat, right? It's a three-way chat. And if we get any comments or questions for anybody else, we'll just include those into the conversation. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for being brave enough to join me. First live, like what are we expecting? It really is just going to be three-way chat anyway. But give us a little bit about you. So Tracy, I'll come to you first because you're top of my screen. So let us know who you are, what you do, why you're here.
Oh, yeah, my name's Tracy Morrison. I'm here because I've experienced burnout, really. I do work in the National Health Service anyway at the moment, and I'm actually completing my coach training at the moment because after having the experience of burnout myself, things have changed, and I feel that it's time to actually join, this ripple effect of yours, Kelly, and get going out there and sharing the word about what burnout is, what to look for, etc., so that we can actually try and prevent rather than try and really sort of cure as such, I suppose, afterwards, to try and stop that experience for others that is rather unpleasant.
Yeah, definitely rather unpleasant. Absolutely. And you said there, just before I come to Britt, you said you kind of work in the NHS. I think we keep seeing, don't we, stats and information and all sorts, right, telling us that, but I talk about it as well, some of the stats that we see to tell us that burnout is rising in healthcare, burnout is rising within the NHS. For your experience, I mean, I'm going to make an assumption. I know we've had some conversations before, but it is a real thing, right? For healthcare professionals, for those of you in the NHS, right? This is something that we need to be aware of, right? This is impacting careers. This is impacting you. Do you just I don't know, this may not be necessarily a quick answer, Tracy, but why do you think it is rising as much as it is in the NHS and across the kind of healthcare sector?
Again, from my sort of personal experience, I didn't particularly know what burnout is. you know, we've all got, as you've said many a time, you know, that, you know, we all think we know what it is, but we really, you know, we really don't. We're just scratching the surface, really. And actually, I think from a personal sort of perspective that actually a lot of us in the NHS are not actually aware of it. Neither we think we are, but we're not.
Yeah.
You know, so the other thing is obviously the time element as well, because we're all under pressure, constantly under pressure, you know, to meet targets, to, you know, deliver service, to run teams, etc., meet our KPIs. So actually, it's a very demanding role, and I've seen it. I've been in the NHS for 35 years now, and my goodness, have I seen a big change in it. So it is about. I personally feel that actually we need to talk more about it. We need to have the word out there what it is, and actually it would be really good to actually even consider sort of some form of touching on burnout and self-care, etc., when we're actually in an induction process into the trust. You know, with, you know, every so many years to do sort of additional training, just, you know, just as a reminder, you know, that sowing the seed, which is so important. So I think that's really my perspective on it, is everyone is really busy. And that doesn't mean that people don't want to help. It's just everyone has got so much on their plates, juggling so many different balls and things, really. So it can be tunnel vision. There we go.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for saying yes when I asked for volunteers for today. It's lovely to have you. I just know we're gonna have a fab conversation. So thank you. It's lovely to have you. And Britt, hello. Thank you for well, I don't know if you volunteered. You were like, "Am I brave enough?" I was like, "I will take that as a yes that you're doing it." And here you are. So Britt, tell us again. I suppose same question, right? Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
So I'm Britt, and I'm a coach and a strategic advisor and a fractional leader when appropriate, for incredible businesses and insanely talented individuals. That is my sort of focus for now. I left a corporate and professional services career about 18 months ago. And I joined the academy, or your Burnout Awareness training, in January this year. And I fall into everything that I think Tracy has just kind of taught to, in terms of if you'd have asked me what's burnout, I'd have probably thought I could get it probably 95% right. And I'd have maybe explained something about fatigue, long hours, maybe said, you know, you're stressed, take some time off. And through sort of spheres of being connected with you and seeing what you were saying on social media, I had an uncomfortable realization that actually I had no idea. And as someone who has always looked to support people, my peers, my colleagues, my team, I really sat uncomfortably with that. And I thought, right, okay, well, definitely as a coach, this will massively benefit both my ability to coach the level that I'm working with. But when I step into that space as a leader, I take it as a responsibility more than ever to protect that team and make sure that they can thrive. And before I did the training, I don't know that if this was present, I was doing them that service. So I joined the training. I got more than I could have ever bargained for from the training. And, you know, it's a real privilege to be part of that academy, because it is evolving, as Tracy's spoken to. There is more and more awareness of it. You know, you've mentioned the Gallup report yesterday. We had a masterclass in the academy talking about diagnosis, and just how many ways you can be diagnosed without it actually truly addressing what burnout is. And so for me, I see it as a real secret weapon sounds like a negative thing, but for a positive
Oh,
cause.
it is great. A positive weapon.
Yeah, a positive weapon in my toolkit to kind of go, right, okay, let's change the conversation on this. Because prevention will always be better than cure, especially in the place of burnout, because burnout's a whole body experience, often with much more chronic, longer term effects. And being able to navigate both the conversation, but get that individual to the place where that support is needed, is a much better scenario than after.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Well, again, thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for saying yes. So I suppose let's kind of start the conversation with something that you've both kind of touched on there then. So you both initially assumed, right? I kind of know what burnout is. I probably would be able to talk about it. I'd probably be able to spot it. Having now more awareness, what difference do you think that has made to you, to the people that you work with? How has kind of knowing more helped you to better help others and yourselves?
Do you want me to take that one first, Tracy, as you went?
Yeah, you carry on, Beth.
So I think for me, having that awareness of sort of the whole picture and that whole body insight means that, certainly from a coaching perspective, when somebody starts talking about different threads of a conversation or an experience, I can much more readily pull that together, rather than try and treat all of the symptoms. There's a cause and there's an impact. For my clients to date, it's been much earlier in the process, because I can see the mask. And I think the one thing that is quite prevalent in the people where burnout often, where it impacts, is you've got real high achieving, real high performing people who won't recognize it. So they won't actually articulate, a list of symptoms or a list of things that are going on. They talk around it, or they'll mask it because of the shame that's attached to it. And so through the awareness and the toolkit that you get as a result of the training, you can start to unpick some of this and navigate it. And it's not always a burnout story or a burnout case, but what it is an understanding and awareness as to how, the neurology links to the psychology that links to the physiology. And, I've had feedback that, it's just unlocked something that led to a better outcome. And it could have been another 2 years and something might have been different, or it might never have happened. We'll never know. But I know that it allows me to be a coach that coaches a whole person rather than sort of what they turn up and say. And then certainly in the fractional leadership capacity, and walking into those rooms, like I said at the beginning, I see it as a real responsibility to consider that whole environment. So I'm sure people who follow you will be accustomed with your burnout equation, and that's toxic environment minus the loss of sense of self, equals burnout. And if I'm a leader in that scenario, it's on me to make sure that environment is not a toxic one. But also, if I'm a fractional leader and I'm coming in and out, I actually really challenge the if you like, the people I'm working for before I go in, to work out if it's an environment that's going to suit me. It's given me a lot of personal advocacy as well, because I can't know all this stuff and not look after me as well. So actually, I show up better as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a colleague, as a leader, and as a coach. And so, I probably use something from it every day. And actually that's the brilliance of it.
And that's and I love all of that. Thank you very much. I like who knew, right, that you'd be able to make better decisions for you and your clients as a result of kind of that. So thank you. And I know, and some of that was like totally unexpected, right? It's not, I didn't train, I didn't create it that way. As I said, this isn't a pitch for the training. So those of you that are watching, okay, I don't know if comments are working. If you are there, say hi. Let us know that you're there. And if any of you have got questions for either myself or Tracy or Britt this afternoon, do pop them in there. But thank you, and I appreciate that. And what you said there about coaching, and without without going into kind of too much detail, I know you and I have had conversations. You mentioned it again yesterday, in that actually with some of the knowledge that you now have, some of this increased awareness, and you've just said again, right? There's more preventative stuff that you're able to do, and people may or may not have got there in the first place, right? But there is some of that preventative stuff that's happening. But also, I know you and I have talked about some of the where you haven't necessarily said yes to working with people as a coach because of some of the things that said. You've been able to signpost them for additional stuff, and the likelihood is they will then come to you for coaching at some point later. But without that awareness, do you think you'd have just like, yeah, let's work together and we just kind of coach on it? Do you think that even some of that early stage stuff has changed for you as well?
Yeah, so actually, I guess I hadn't considered it. I think there's been two instances. So I think in one of them, I think what I had as a learned behavior from a corporate M&A, professional services M&A, and sort of, the hustle and it being a bit of a badge of honor to do 4 or 5 back-to-back late nights or all-nighters, is that I would have taken them at face value as to I need to maybe get a better work-life balance, or I'm readying for my promotion, so this is what I'm doing. I think what I would have taken them at their word, and I may have coached them through it. The training meant that I asked some other questions to understand truly what was going on around it, and it opened a whole chasm. And we had a very honest conversation about what was actually going on. In the second scenario, again, similar to the first, no real awareness at all. But the person that presented was someone who really struggled to even articulate anything. They were completely lost. They were physically frozen. So that fight, flight, freeze, analogy that most people will be familiar with, I would imagine. I've never seen it so profound. And I think I would have always wanted to lean in and help and support, but what I would have signposted may have been completely wrong in terms of what they needed. Whereas actually what I was able to do was ask for that kind of permission to share some insights and share some different materials to go away and consider, and then come back if they wanted another conversation. And both of those individuals have gone on and got different interventions and support for what it is that they need. And I guess, reflecting on it live here, I would have probably, the second person I know I wouldn't have been able to help just because of how they presented. The first person, I might have just tried to coach them through that promotion because my understanding of burnout wasn't as acute as it now is.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, whether people have been following me or they've done the training, they've been part of it. Again, not sales pitch, but to kind of take that through, because I think there is that, isn't there? And Tracy, you're going through your training at the moment, right? For those of us as coaches, I think we get told, right, anybody's coachable, right? You can coach anybody. These are the tools. These are the questions that you ask. This is kind of where you go with it. And again, from when I started coaching more on burnout, and I didn't necessarily set out to say I am a burnout coach. I was talking about my own personal experience, and that was bringing coaching clients to me, kind of right back in those early days. But there was something for me that's like, hang on a minute, these clients aren't reacting in the same way. They're not getting the same progress. Then they're not getting the same stuff. I then need to go and learn more about it, which is why I began to kind of specialize in this area. But we get trained. I was trained and qualified, right, as a solution focused executive coach. So it's about, we don't talk about the problem, we talk about the solution, right? How we keep moving people forward. We keep talking about goal setting and progress and momentum and all of that stuff. And again, it's like, when it is burnout, it's like, well, hang on a minute. Decision making's hard. progress is hard, goal setting is hard, confidence is hard, judgment is like, all of these things are just a no-go. Again, unless we know what it is that we need to put in place before we start to deal with that goal setting and the progress, because we can still absolutely do that once we've got that awareness. And we've talked about kind of different styles and different tools and techniques, haven't we, right, that we need to be putting in place, because actually normal coaching doesn't necessarily work if somebody's in that high stress or they're kind of on the brink of burnout. So yeah, thank you. Tracy, what about for you? What do you think kind of burnout, just the awareness, how has having more awareness helped you as an individual, helped or even in the kind of in your role? What do you think the kind of difference has been for you?
For me personally, it was my first senior job really that I went into. So actually, and it was a a new sort of area of work, etc., that I was in. So I didn't know if this was normal, what was happening to me. So therefore, as a new person into any role, you just sort of get your head down, ask the questions, get on with it, observe, and I just wasn't quite, just sort of thinking about it. I wasn't quite sure really if this was normal, So I did actually ask for a bit of guidance and support. And then what I was getting was not what I was hoping back. It was more of a lip service. And actually, there was other things going on where I was working as well. Again, which adds to everything that happened to me. And I, as I say, you are sort of talking about a book, aren't you, and things and etc. So I'm hoping that my story can, be considered for that. But as I said before, it's not about pointing fingers or blame. So now having reflection on it all, I can actually see clearly what's happened, because I am in a much better place. I didn't realize what was happening to me was burnout. And actually, I was just going downhill slowly, until one day I ended up at a GP surgery saying, I've got a brain tumor, help me. And he said to me, no, my dear, he says, you've got burnout. And I was thinking, me, I'm strong, I get on with it. How the heck has this happened? But the thing is it's sense of self that really stood out for me. Who am I? Was when you said that to us in the masterclass. Who am I? Actually, who am I? Yes. So again, sort of things that I'm thinking of. I'm in a bit of a different situation to Britt. That yes, I'm in my training at the moment, but obviously in the NHS we do a lot of communications and things like that. It's just not actually having the qualification. So my sort of story with it really is thinking more about how I go forward with that in the NHS at the moment, because I have actually just started a new job. I've gone into a new role, and I'm really adamant that everything I've learned is going to be taken in and used in one way or another. But at the moment, I'm getting my feet under the table, and then we'll take it from there, because I want to bring that into team meetings, or I want to speak to, speak about it, etc. Because I believe sowing the seed and sharing actually will help everyone. And, again, I didn't know what was happening to me. Maybe someone else doesn't know that that's happening to them. Yeah. And we work in a place where there's we talk lots about neuroplasticity. We talk a lot about our role as early intervention. And it's really important that we look after ourselves so that we can serve, our community from a full cup and be really present with them. So it's a bit like what Britt was talking about in her coaching. So from my perspective, I have learned so much. You were speaking to me through and through throughout that whole training. And actually, I haven't actually coached anyone with burnout yet, but what I can say is the word's out there already. There's ripples because my family know about it. My friends know about it, you know, and then they're talking about it to their friends and things. So even although I've not done any sort of coaching as such about that at this moment in time, I'm sure that will come. I have got the tools in my toolbox now, which and I don't feel uncomfortable talking about it, Kelly. And I think this is really important, is actually checking in on people, because I do think if people had checked in on me, then actually things might have been a bit different. You know, that early prevention sort of thing, really. So does that help? Really, does that answer?
Thank you. And we'll come on to a bit more of the prevention in a moment. And I know you said you're not coaching, but I do know that you have been running some sessions, right? I know you've been doing some presentations and all of that sort of stuff, haven't you? So you have been getting the word out. You've been doing it in a very awareness. So I think it's now kind of becoming part of everything that you do, right? I think, you know, we talk about kind of core values, right? We have that you know, that stick of rock that kind of goes through us, don't we? That those kind of things that we carry through. So I think burnout awareness is definitely part of that stick of rock for you now, right? That's kind of the stuff that you're doing.
Absolutely. And it is, I just don't want anyone else to suffer it's just Britt was saying, it's a whole body experience, isn't it? It's physical, it's psychological, it's emotional, and actually you just feel absolutely overwhelmed with life, and it is about getting one step in front of the other. And at work and things, especially, I see people working, you know, saying that they're having to work over hours, etc. And then what happens, like with myself, I can talk about, is actually I kept thinking, keep going. And then it was getting up earlier and it was finishing work later. Then it was going to bed and your head swirling round, hardly any great sleep, and then back to it again, because you're wanting to meet the needs, you know, of your people, of your staff, and the population really that we serve. However, we really have to look after ourselves in this. So there is a few things that I do think from it that actually, in my experience, I did speak with occupational health. I did speak with Speak Up Guardians. I did speak with managers. And unfortunately, I didn't. I had 3 managers, going on to my 4th manager in 18 months. So again, there's no continuity there. So nobody really gets to know a person really properly. So, you know, I really think the word, not just with the colleagues that I work with, it's like the extended multidisciplinary team need to have all this information as well. And, you know, I was just thinking actually before we came on session as well, is like, occupational health, it's a telephone call now and they'll have a chat with you there. And I was just thinking to myself, do you know what? It'd be much better if it was something like a Teams, so you could actually see the person, because it's amazing what you can get from seeing somebody and the way they're interacting with you rather than the telephone, because you can just mask it all and hide it. So it's not a full picture. Yeah. So
yeah. That masking is very real, isn't it? We can talk about that a lot. Again, maybe we could talk about what that happens to awareness. Again, for those of you who are joining us live, if you've got comments or questions, please prop them. We've got a comment from Ethel. Ethel says she was at a crossroads on how to handle burnout. This is a very helpful session. Thank you very much for joining us, Ethel. So yeah, if you're there, say hi, let us know. Again, if you've got questions or comments, we're going to keep talking. Everybody knows I could talk about this all day. So I suppose from your perspective, and again, you've both got very different roles, right? You and some kind of, you know, different experiences. You're working in different organizations. Thinking about the organizations that you work in or the one-to-one clients that you're working with, what do you think might be the benefit of more people having burnout awareness? So if we were to kind of say that I don't know, burnout awareness was a key part of a manager's role, a coach's supervisor's role, if we were to kind of look at it from that perspective, what do you think the benefits would be of having more burnout aware people, either as coaches or as managers or leaders within organizations?
Oh, well, I go first, Britt, this time.
Yeah, go for it.
I think, well, definitely within the NHS, it would definitely help build resilience. It would help us not be anxious about having that important conversation. It could help reduce sickness, really, as well. And as we know with burnout, we're not talking about one day here and there. We're actually talking about long periods of time, because people's nervous systems are absolutely flawed, aren't they? And it can actually go on, recovery can take up to 3 years, can't it, as well? And even then you can be left with chronic health conditions, etc. And then sometimes you can take that path of least resistance, isn't it? As we learn in your training and I know Britt loves it as well, as the ski slope analogy that you spoke to us about, and it really, really resonates. So there is lots, we see sickness in the NHS is just really, really high. And actually, that is more likely one of the ways that we can actually make a positive impact, is by getting this burnout information to people, making it part of weekly conversations. And when you're checking in with people, it's not like, oh, fine, I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Or do you know what? I actually find a lot of people now, since I've been doing my coaching, is the question is that they'll say, how are you doing? Fine. And you're like, you've just asked a question and answered it for them. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's, really. So they'll just go, yeah, I'm fine, whatever. And, sometimes it's like, if something's not right as well, it's just like, well, do you know what? Do you fancy a cup of tea, and we'll have a quick chat or whatever, or when would you be free? So it's making time. And sometimes we have to make that time. There is a thing that we do in the NHS that it does differ, but usually every 8 weeks or so, like 8 to 12 weeks, we have a meeting, with our staff, and on a one-to-one basis, and we just chat about, progress, how you're doing, self-development, personally, how you're feeling, how things are going, how work's going, etc. But again, I have to say those conversations need to be a little bit more on the health perspective of that person, and how they are and where they're currently sitting at that time, and how we can help empower them, not enable them, empower them going forward to actually be resilient and actually stay at work as well, really. So it is a powerful conversation, and I would like it personally to be less tick box. I see a lot of that happening, and and protected time. So that's the kind of things, really. We know the NHS is really stretched, and we're all there trying to do the best we can with the resources we've got and the time we've got. And it's really important that we all look after ourselves and we look after our colleagues. We're a team after all.
Yeah, thank you. Britt, what about you? What do you think would kind of be the impact if we had more people that were burnout aware in organizations? Again, you do a lot of fractional stuff, right? Different organizations, all of that stuff. So you're seeing lots of different environments, lots of different people, lots of different teams at kind of any one time, really, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's interesting actually, because I work with founders. So from literally one-man bands right up to corporate organizations. And I'm a firm believer in, when we know better, we do better. And I've always liked to think that I'm an advocate, I'm an ally, and I seek opportunities to learn and get educated about stuff that I don't know about. And leadership's a funny thing, because it's kind of taught right back from school, and it's something I'm quite passionate about because I'm also involved with schools, is that, you know, once you're a leader, you've got all the answers. And so we kind of stop asking questions, and we're assumed as experts. And I think there's a thing in there in terms of assuming when you get to a level you do know. And as I said at the start, I thought I knew what burnout was because I'd heard it from an education sense, sort of definitely post-COVID, but in a leadership sense. But it was always equated to sort of time and not having any work-life balance. And as we know, it's a lot more. But in a founder scenario, and whether it be coaching or whether it be sort of getting ready to start up or scale up and take it where you've got the responsibility for other people, it's making them acutely aware of that environment and what their expectations are. Because if from the word go, it's that, you know, blood brother type thing, you know, I'm going to, you know, die for this business. There's a real piece there with a founder that they've got to understand that no one else should be expected to kind of sign their name in blood in that same way.
Yeah.
Which is always an interesting dynamic conversation. And then it's about when then they go up where they start to build teams of being a leader that is open, that is able to curate a conversation with somebody that is one they're there to listen. So to Tracy's point, it's not how are you, and then they're too busy doing their emails over here. It's really sitting and listening and being ready to be uncomfortable with what they might say, and having the capacity to deal with it, because you're not expected to know the answers. You're not expected to be able to help anybody, and it's not about helping and fixing everyone, but it in a leadership capacity, it should be about support, or that's where I feel. And then sort of more at a corporate level and sort of those that I coach, it's about stepping into that space of letting go of what they probably for 20 years has believed to be the recipe for success, which is hard. Because again, you get it, you know, the harder you work, the more you get promoted, the more you get paid, and you go around again, and you go around again, and you go around again.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing is telling you what you're doing is right. And then suddenly you're at a table where you're expected to be the one that says, let's do it differently. And that sounds a lot easier than it is when you've been doing it for 20 years. It's about the person coming to terms with that, not necessarily just that room. So for me, it's about just that simplicity of, you know, when you know better, you do better. Because you will pause when you pass somebody in a corridor and you say, oh, how are you? You don't just walk away if they hesitate or they pause. You stop and you actually listen and you read what their face says. Or when you're building an organization as a founder, you think about what you want in place or how you want it in place or what conversations you want to make sure there's time for. And it's not about, you know, more work-life balance, because there will be people who work 20 hours a day who never experience burnout. It's not about this sort of crazy space of you need to spend 10 hours sleeping and 10 hours working. It's not that. It's about individuals being able to say something's, having that advocacy, saying something's off, something feels right, and not thinking that because everybody else is doing what you're doing, that it just must be normal. So to Tracy's point,
there, I think when we say normal, and there's a few things that I'll bring Tracy back onto screen. She vanished there for a minute, but we've got her back. But I think, and there's a few things there. I think where you kind of said about like leadership for starting off, right, where there is this assumption that all of a sudden you're just the expert and you kind of know it all. And I think there are so many senses. You know, my background was HR, I was HR director, and it was that same thing. And I see it repeatedly with HR over and over again, right? Just because you're in the job, or you kind of wear the badge, the assumption is that you must know absolutely everything there is to know about people. And of course, that's not the reality, right? You're not an expert in people just because you've kind of got the title. And again, I think also the point that you made there about, like, you know, we keep being rewarded. We absolutely keep being rewarded, right? Because we get told this is what we do, as you said. you do the work, you work hard, you get the promotion, you get the salary, and then you go over it again. And we keep saying, well, actually, Britt, everything that you're doing, let's reward you even more for it. So again, your brain is here. I'm doing exactly the right thing, right? And both of you have kind of mentioned the burnout equation a little bit. And I did a session this morning for a group. And again, we were kind of talking about that loss of sense of self, because actually in a lot of organizations, we are told, aren't we, right? These are the values, these are the behaviors. If you tick all of these boxes, then you'll be right. But actually you can lose yourself in the first place. And if you're told, I continue to kind of use the analogy, I was a square peg, but by the time I left my in-house role, all of my corners had been chipped away, right? I had become this round peg in a round hole because I kept being told, we love you, but we want less. We want, we love your curiosity, but just be a bit less. We love your color and your vibrancy, but we need a little bit less. And every single time we present as less than ourselves, every single time we allow those corners to get chipped away at, then that's kind of what causes some of this stuff. And again, to the point that you've both made, the assumption is, and I still see it repeatedly when we're talking about burnout, and we know, right, the closer that we get to it, the less likely we are to be talking about burnout. We just keep going because, our brain is trying to keep us safe. But with all of those things that are happening, like, we're not recognizing it. We just keep on going. We keep on going. It starts to become the norm. And we lose ourselves within that process. We lose ourselves as we kind of come into it. And it is that toxicity that really starts to take over. But as more people, and if I see one more bloody post from, coaches or, kind of so-called, or, coaches that are like, well, I'm a burnout expert, you don't clearly know anything about it, that are literally just talking work-life balance, just work less. That's not going to solve burnout. It's just not. And again, for me, that's really why this awareness piece is key. I've just come off a call with somebody who, we're maybe looking at a possible kind of partnership opportunity, but it's like, they don't understand necessarily the severity of burnout. So even with some of the stuff that could you just give us a tick list of this? Like, no, because it's not a one size fits all. I can't give you the answer. Fix it all in 90 minutes. I can't make a team of experts in 90 minutes. I can't do this stuff. We need to understand the severity of it. And sometimes a little bit of burnout awareness can be even more dangerous than lots of information when it comes to burnout awareness, right? Because the assumption is, I've just watched these three women have a conversation on LinkedIn, and now I know everything there is to know about burnout, and now I can go and try and solve it and fix it. And again, we know that's not the case. And Britt, you mentioned the kind of session that you came to yesterday. I'm very, very conscious. It doesn't just stop at the two, whether you do a 2-day with me, a 5-day with me, a year with me, whether you do a 90-minute session with me, like whatever it is, the learning does not stop there. I'm 12 years in this space now. I'm still learning stuff. I've still got answers that I want answering. I've still got questions that I want answering. I'm still going down rabbit holes with research and studying and trying to get as much information as I can, again, to share with the alumni, to share with my audience, to do all of that stuff. The session we did yesterday, right? How are, and Tracy, you made the point, right? Your GP had said to you, you're at burnout, right? How are GPs diagnosing burnout if burnout is not a medical condition, right? How are people diagnosing burnout if it's not a diagnosis, right? There's some of the questions that I've got. We talked about that again for about 90 minutes yesterday, right? We went through that in lots of detail. I've constantly got questions to learn, and I'm constantly learning. And I suppose for me, the biggest takeaway as I continue to do all of this stuff is that there just is no one and done. Like, whether we've got lived experience or not, right? There just is no one and done when it comes to this stuff. And I think the danger for all of us, I am a burnout educator, but there is no way on earth that I would still say that I know everything there is to know about burnout, because I don't. There will be information that I haven't seen. There will be research that I haven't seen. There will be studies that I haven't seen. So I think we just kind of need to be mindful of that. I'm conscious. I'll start going off on my rant now, which we don't want. Ladies, I'm gonna come back to both of you. Britt, I'll come to you first. If there was, I don't know, if there was a takeaway, if there was a key piece of information, if there was something that you wanted either somebody to know about burnout or about burnout awareness, what would you want to leave people with to kind of, I don't know, plant a seed or get them thinking, or anything like that? What would you kind of, what would be the thing?
Oh, that's a tough question. So for me, the big unlock for me in the burnout awareness training, or the thing that made the whole thing sing, was understanding the neuroscience and why biologically we do what we do.
Yeah.
Because in terms of the loss of sense of self, I think that's quite hard to either articulate or understand.
Yeah.
If you're not necessarily a coach or a medical professional or a therapist or anyone who's looked into this.
Or even if you don't have that self-awareness, right? I
Yeah.
suppose you don't, if you've not necessarily got
How would you know
that level of depth of self-awareness, you're not necessarily going to get it, are you?
Yeah. And I think, the truth is that when you're at school, success looks like one way academically. The kids who aren't good at subjects are suddenly not successful. So it starts early on, all the way through to this sort of like, to your square peg round hole analogy of just the chip in. There are organizations out there who want to recruit apprentices and graduates because then they train them in their way, because then they'll be
like them.
If you cut them in half, they'll bleed whatever the corporate color is, type thing. And we've all heard it, and we've all been there. And we know when people will, we don't want them to leave the organization because the investment we've made in them to train them to that point. And so there is this like endemic thing of just how we expected or thought businesses should be. So we're almost asking people to sort of step out of what they know and unlearn a lot, which takes a lot and takes a lot of commitment and a lot of practice. And so I think for me, understanding, and it's not complicated. Actually, when we went through it, I was straight back to my GCSE biology class and talking about, I had funny pictures in my mind because for my GCSEs, I literally drew a hippo to think about, the amygdala, the hypothalamus. And so, it took me straight back there. But actually, the fight, flight, freeze response and what happens when you're stressed, and stepping into that primitive brain, and the fact that if you are stressed, the why you go into that sort of hyper focus and you do what you've always done to get through what you need to get through, you suddenly for me, I just had all these alarm bells of like, so that's why I do what I do. And it doesn't matter how much my husband screams at me and says, Britt, just stop, or Britt, why can't you just come away? And it's because that's what's got me successful before. So I just keep on driving. And there was a live you did, and you talked about, have you ever made an excuse to go to the toilet but actually to check your emails? And it made me laugh, because even now I still see things that actually left unchallenged or not sort of picked up on. They're all little things that are just buried in there of little behaviors that, again, now, like I say, there's an advocacy there of me, especially now as I'm running my own business, to work out what those non-negotiables are, because I'm only answerable to me. So if I'm making excuses to myself or to my husband to go and have a lie down, but actually I'm just going to go and read all my emails and clear my inbox, I'm only cheating myself ultimately. And actually I keep, when I need to, because I'm a very practical person, I go back to just the very basics biology of, right, okay. And Tracy mentioned it before, the ski slope. So, I know that it will be harder to do what I am doing now because it's different, and it's a new run down that slope. It's much easier for me to pick up the phone and go and get full-time employed and go back to a job, because that's all, for example, that's what I've always done. It is much harder to go, no, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to answer to myself. But because I've got that psychology and that understanding of the neuroscience that, we've all got and we've all had, and it's not new, it's just refreshed.
Yeah.
I can just sit with myself and go, okay, right, it's supposed to feel hard. It's not supposed to be easy. So just sit with it, roll with it, move on. And that's what I mean in terms of that personal advocacy, because you then start to grab that sense of self, and you might start to learn who you are. And not everybody's lucky enough to have a coach. Coaches are amazing, if we do say so ourselves. But if anyone has, if anyone's experienced coaching, it's powerful, and giving somebody back their power, and it can be from anything. It doesn't have to be from burnout, but giving someone an acute self-awareness that goes, no, I am, bloody brilliant at this. That's powerful, and everyone will find that infectious. And it's just those things really that just, we're all brilliant. And if we could all do the things that we're brilliant at, I think the world would be a very different place. And so, sometimes to be brilliant, it takes a bit of work. And for me, that neuroscience of, right, okay, it feels hard, not because I'm doing the wrong thing, because I'm trying to actively untrain my brain to think the way that it's thought for the last, 20 years. So that's almost that validation, that reassurance when you don't have the coach sat in front of you, or you don't have the leader checking in on you to kind of go, you've got this. So that for me is the thing that I would take away.
Amazing. Thank you. And Tracy, what about you? What's the kind of thing that you'd want, either about burnout or burnout awareness, that you would want to kind of leave people with as we kind of draw today's live? I told you it'd be all right, didn't I? For both of you, I was like, we're just going to have a chat. What would be the one thing that you'd kind of want people to leave with, either about burnout or burnout awareness?
What I would say is listen to your intuition. The intuition is telling you something. So ask the intuition, what are you trying to tell me? Sit with it. Sit with the uncomfortable feeling. Don't get worried about sitting with it and asking, because actually we all, as we know within coaching, we've all got our own answers within that empower us to go forward. So I would say is spend quality time with yourself and asking yourself those questions. And even, I have to say, even this morning, I journal every day now, since this has all happened to me. And since I started my coach training, it's actually me coaching myself, going down the journal and asking a coaching question. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? So actually, it's such a powerful tool. So there is many things you can do. The other thing is, I would say, is to be mindful. And again, we lent it in the masterclass, Kelly, as well, is some people, like for me, I, was thinking, right, I need to take accountability here. I'm going to go out back and get running, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to get cycling, and I'm like, I've got no energy. And then I'm letting myself down. So I'm just going round and round and making myself, really uncomfortable, when actually it's things like yoga, Pilates, mindfulness. Going on a walk, before I would just be doing the walk quickly. Now I go on the walk and I see the birds and I see the flowers coming, and I talk, look at the colors, all those kind of things, because when you're in burnout, it's not that like that. It's the what's next, what's coming next, what's coming next. Yeah. So I would say that, and what I would say is, don't be scared to have that discussion with anyone in your family, with any of your friends, with any of your staff members, etc. That's really important too. Basically, change starts with you, and actually there's only one of you, so look after yourself, really. That's what I'd like to end it on, really.
Amazing. I think that's the perfect place to finish then, right? There's only one of you. And again, I'm a big believer in, again, I've had some coaching sessions today, and I've gone quite heavy with my client. I'm like, you are the only one that there is, and you need to be looking after yourself. I have caveated it with that those kind of statements are not actually coaching. But yeah, we are the only ones. So let's leave it there. Britt and Tracy, thank you very much for joining me live. For those of you that have watched us live, thank you very much. If you are watching on replay, again, right, keep the comments coming. So whilst this will be on my live feed, if you have got questions that you want to ask Britt, or you've got questions that you want to ask Tracy, just give them a tag. If you're not following Britt and Tracy already on LinkedIn, give them a follow. So Tracy Morrison and Brittany Brown. Give them a follow on LinkedIn. Ask them their questions. Take a look at their coaching. Tracy's on her doing her kind of coaching. I don't know if she needs any, but she might need some practice clients at some point as she goes through.
I do.
So you want to be a practice client with a with Burnout Awareness coach, get in contact with Tracy. If you want fractional leadership and you want coaching and all of that's good stuff, get in contact with Britt again, Burnout Aware. She can kind of help with all of that stuff as well. So give them a follow. If you've got questions for them both, or if you've got questions for me, drop them in the comments. We will answer them for you. And yeah, let's just keep the conversation going. I'm going to be back live with you again all next Thursday, 2 p.m. Same again, LinkedIn and YouTube. So for now, I'm going to say thank you very much. Britt and Tracy, thank you very much. Well done on bursting your kind of live cherry on LinkedIn. You're both very, very brilliant. And I'll see you all again next week. See you soon. Bye, bye, bye.